the child who touched the king's mark. The blood moon hung over Voss Castle like a watchful eye, tinting the winter clouds a deep, bruised red. Inside the fortress, music drifted through marble corridors. Soft violins, low drums, the kind of elegant sound that made humans feel small. Tonight wasn't just any royal gathering. Tonight was the Crimson Court banquet, where vampire nobles toasted old alliances and newer grudges beneath chandeliers that burned with enchanted flame. And somewhere far below the throne room, down in the servants' wing where the air smelled of soap and linen, 7-year-old Mira sat on a narrow cot, swinging her legs and waiting for her mother to finish work. Mira was a maid's daughter, which meant she was supposed to be quiet, invisible, and grateful to exist in a place that didn't truly want her. Her mother, Evelyn Hayes, didn't say much tonight. She never did when she was tired, and she was always tired. Her hands were rough from scrubbing stone and polishing silver that belonged to immortals who never said thank you. The castle rewarded obedience, not kindness. But Evelyn was kind anyway, soft-eyed, gentle-voiced, the sort of person who apologized even when someone else was cruel. "Mira," Evelyn whispered while tying her apron, "you stay here. You do not wander. Not tonight." Mira nodded because she loved her mother more than anything. But as soon as Evelyn disappeared into the corridor, the silence pressed in like a heavy blanket. Mira stared at the cracked ceiling, listening to distant footsteps and imagining the grand halls above, the ones she wasn't supposed to see. Curiosity to Mira didn't feel like disobedience. It felt like breathing. She slipped off the cot and padded barefoot to a small gap behind a storage shelf, where she'd found a narrow passage weeks ago. The castle had secret ways, old servant tunnels and forgotten routes carved when the first king still walked in sunlight. Mira fit where adults didn't. That made her dangerous in a world that hated surprises. She squeezed through and followed the faint glow of floating candles that drifted like sleepy fireflies. The higher she climbed, the warmer the air became. The farther she went, the louder the castle sounded. Music, laughter, the clink of crystal, the murmur of hundreds of voices speaking with polished politeness that could turn sharp in a heartbeat. When she reached the final bend, she froze. A pair of giant doors stood half open, spilling golden light into the corridor like a waterfall. Mira crept forward and peeked inside. The throne room stole her breath. It was enormous, columns of black marble veined with crimson, stained glass windows depicting ancient kings with eyes that seemed to watch you back. Courtiers moved like shadows dressed in silk and velvet. Their smiles were perfect. Their eyes were not. It was a room full of beauty sharpened into something that could cut. And at the far end, on a throne of obsidian and iron, sat King Lucien Voss. Mira had seen him before, once from far away when he passed through a corridor and servants bowed so low their foreheads nearly hit the floor. But seeing him up close was different. His presence didn't just fill the room. It silenced it. He wore black armor trimmed in silver, as if even metal had learned to obey him. His hair was pale, almost moonlit. His face looked sculpted from cold stone, sharp cheekbones, a mouth that rarely softened, eyes the color of embers. He looked like a story you were warned not to believe. But it wasn't his crown that caught Mira's attention. It was his hand. His palm rested on the throne's arm, and on his skin glowed a mark, crimson, pulsing faintly like a heartbeat. A crescent moon wrapped around a thorned rose. Mira's throat tightened, because she knew that mark. Her mother had the same one. Evelyn's mark wasn't on her palm, it was on her upper arm, hidden under sleeves, revealed only when fabric slipped during laundry or when Evelyn woke from nightmares and clutched her own skin like it burned. It had glowed once years ago when Mira was small and sick and Evelyn cried over her until dawn. Mira didn't understand what it meant. She only knew it made her mother afraid. And now it was on the king. Before she could think, Mira stepped into the throne room. She moved between nobles like a ghost. No one noticed at first. Servants' children didn't exist in people's minds unless they were being blamed for something. The guards near the doors were watching the crowd, not the floor. Mira walked straight across the polished marble, her small feet soundless. She reached the throne. Lucien was speaking to a nobleman, voice calm and controlled. Mira lifted her hand and touched the glowing mark on his palm. The moment her fingers made contact, the seal flared. Crimson light rippled across the room like a wave, making chandeliers flicker and stained glass tremble. The air itself seemed to inhale. Conversations cut off mid-syllable. A goblet slipped from someone's hand and shattered on the marble, the sound loud in the stunned silence. Lucien's head snapped down. His eyes locked onto Mira, this tiny human child standing where she had no right to stand. Mira didn't pull back. She wasn't brave because she wanted to be. She was brave because in her mind she was helping her mother. She looked up at the immortal king and said clearly, innocently, the words that froze every breath in the chamber. Sir, my mom has a mark just like yours. For a heartbeat, no one moved. Then the room reacted like a storm breaking. Whispers exploded. Nobles leaned forward, faces tightening with fear, anger, disbelief. Guards shifted, hands hovering near weapons. The High Council members, those ancient vampires who advised the king, stared like they'd seen a ghost. Because the blood moon seal was not a decoration. It was bloodline law. A symbol said to appear only on the ruling dynasty, direct descendants of the first king. And the rumor throughout the realm was that Lucien Voss was the last. Lucien stood slowly, towering above the child, and the room shrank under his shadow. His voice was low. Not loud, worse. Quiet like danger. What did you say? Mira blinked, confused by the fear around her. She pointed at his hand, then gestured back toward the servant's wing. My mom, she repeated. She has a mark like that. It glows sometimes, when she has bad dreams. A ripple of panic moved through the nobles. One hissed, impossible. Another murmured, a forgery. A third whispered a prayer under their breath, as if the truth itself could bite. Lucien didn't look at them. He only looked at Mira. Something in his expression shifted. Just a crack, barely visible. Not softness. Not yet. But something close to shock. He knelt before her. The court gasped. No one had seen the king kneel for anyone in centuries. Lucien gently turned Mira's wrist, studying her skin. Mira expected him to be rough. Everyone said the king was cruel. But his touch was careful, as if he handled something precious and dangerous at the same time. Don't be afraid, he said, his voice softer than the room had ever heard from him. Mira swallowed. I'm not afraid. Lucien's gaze sharpened. You should be. And yet his hand didn't tighten. He turned Mira's palm upward. The nobles leaned forward as one, hungry for proof. Beneath Mira's skin, faint as a whisper, the outline of the blood moon seal flickered, like embers under ash. It wasn't fully formed, but it was there. And it pulsed in rhythm with Lucien's own mark, the two symbols responding like they recognized each other. The room went deathly still. Lucien's jaw clenched. His eyes brightened, ember red flaring like coals touched by wind. Not anger. Recognition. Fear. Hope. No one knew which, except the king himself. He rose, turning his head slightly, voice cutting through the court like a blade. Bring me Evelyn Hayes. A council elder stepped forward, trembling. Your Majesty, she is a servant. Lucien's gaze snapped to him, and the elder's words died in his throat. Now, Lucien repeated. Two guards rushed from the room, boots striking marble as they disappeared into the corridors. Lucien looked back at Mira. You told the truth? He asked. Mira nodded. Yes, sir. Lucien's eyes searched her face as if trying to find a lie in a child's innocence. He found none. Across the castle, in the servants' quarters 3 floors below, Evelyn Hayes folded linens with shaking hands. She didn't know why her heart felt wrong, like the air itself warned her. Then the door slammed open. 2 royal guards stood in the doorway, faces hard. Evelyn Hayes, one said. You are summoned to the Scarlet Crown Chamber. Evelyn's blood turned cold. Her first thought wasn't of herself. It was of Mira. Is my daughter okay? Evelyn whispered, dropping the sheets. Please, tell me she's safe. The guards didn't answer. The king has summoned you, the other repeated, stepping aside. Come. Evelyn didn't fight. She didn't argue. She didn't beg because begging never worked here. She only followed, heart pounding so loud it felt like it might break her ribs. As she was escorted upward through corridors she was never allowed to enter, Evelyn's sleeve slipped slightly, and beneath it, hidden on her upper arm, the faint curve of a crimson symbol shimmered once. Like it had woken up. Like it had been waiting. And in the throne room above, Lucien Voss stood beside a small human child and felt the castle itself shift under his feet, ancient magic stirring in stones older than memory. Because if Evelyn Hayes bore the blood moon seal, then the story of his bloodline was a lie. And someone had worked very hard to make sure he never learned the truth. The maid who shouldn't exist. Evelyn entered the Scarlet Crown Chamber with her head down, hands trembling, eyes searching desperately until she saw Mira standing near the throne, alive, unharmed. Relief hit Evelyn so hard she almost collapsed. Then she saw the king's hand. Then she saw his mark. And Evelyn's face went pale. Lucien's voice was calm, but the room felt like it might explode. Roll up your sleeve, he ordered. Evelyn shook her head, a small, broken motion. Your Majesty, please, Mira is just a child, she didn't mean. Roll your sleeve. The cruelty of the command wasn't in volume. It was in certainty. Evelyn's fingers moved slowly. She pushed fabric back. The blood moon seal glowed on her arm, crimson, perfect, impossible. The nobles erupted. She's a fraud. That seal can't be on a human. Kill her before it spreads. Mira stepped forward, placing herself between her mother and the shouting. Don't yell at her. She's nice. Lucien raised his hand. Silence fell instantly. He walked toward Evelyn, eyes locked on the mark like he was looking at a wound that had been hidden too long. Where did you get it? He asked. Evelyn's lips trembled. I was born with it. Lucien's expression sharpened. That's not an answer. Evelyn swallowed. I don't know who my parents were. I was left at a church when I was a baby. The sisters called it a birthmark. But sometimes, it glows. And when it does, I dream of a place I've never been. A throne. A woman crying. A man screaming my name like he's dying. Lucien's breath caught, just once. Because Evelyn had described something only one person alive remembered. A coup. A betrayal. A night Lucien had buried under centuries of silence. The High Council demanded Evelyn be imprisoned. Some demanded she be executed. Others demanded Mira be taken away, for the safety of the realm. Lucien's voice turned lethal. No one touches them. The court went still. Lucien looked at Evelyn and spoke words that stunned every noble present. Evelyn Hayes and her daughter will be placed under royal protection. Evelyn stared at him like he'd spoken madness. Your Majesty. I'm only a maid. Lucien's eyes darkened. You're not only anything, he said. And someone has lied to me for a very long time. That night, Evelyn and Mira were moved from the servants' wing into guarded quarters, clean, warm rooms with silk curtains that Evelyn didn't dare touch. Guards stood outside their door not to imprison them, yet, but to keep others out. And in the shadows of the castle, a figure watched the transfer with narrowing eyes. Because the moment Evelyn's seal glowed, a long dormant spell triggered. A message flew like smoke through hidden channels. The lost blood has been found. And somewhere beyond the castle walls, enemies of the throne began to move. Meanwhile, Lucien stood alone in his private chamber and opened an ancient book bound in dark leather. Inside were family records, names, lineages, seals. He pressed his palm to the page. The book reacted. Ink shifted into new words as if awakened by his blood. A name surfaced where there should have been none. Evelyn Voss. Lucien's knees went weak. Evelyn wasn't just marked by the dynasty. She was the dynasty. And if she was, then the question became terrifying. Why was she born human? The enemy in the council. By morning, rumors raced through the castle faster than sunlight ever could. A servant with the royal seal. A child with a faint echo of it. A king who had knelt. The High Council demanded a private meeting, 8 elders each powerful enough to terrify armies. They insisted Lucien was being manipulated. Humans lie, Elder Varick said smoothly. They survive by deception. Lucien's eyes didn't blink. And vampires survive by arrogance. Varick's smile thinned. Lucien ordered a truth ritual, an ancient test using moonstone and blood magic that could reveal lineage without harming the subject. He refused to let Evelyn be touched by council hands. Instead, he brought in the castle's oldest magic keeper, Lady Seraphine, a silent vampire priestess who hadn't spoken in decades. Seraphine performed the ritual in the moon hall. Evelyn trembled, holding Myra's hand. She expected pain. She expected humiliation. Instead, Lucien stood beside her, not touching, but close enough that his presence felt like a shield. The moonstone basin glowed. Evelyn's seal flared. And the hall filled with visions, memories trapped in blood. A woman in a crown, Lucien's mother, crying as she handed a baby to a hooded figure. A voice whispering, "Hide her among humans. If the council finds her, they will kill her." Lucien's fists clenched. The hooded figure turned in the vision. It was Elder Varick. The room erupted. Varick lunged to destroy the basin. Lucien moved faster, pinning the elder with a single hand, eyes burning. "You trafficked my bloodline," Lucien growled. "You murdered my family and called it duty." Varick's mask cracked. "Your mother was weak," he hissed. "She wanted peace. Peace makes kings soft. We needed a ruler who would never hesitate." Lucien's voice dropped to something deadly quiet. "And you created me by killing what could have softened me." Evelyn stumbled back, horrified. Mira clutched her mother. "Mom, he's bad." "Yes," Evelyn whispered. "He is." Varick tried one last manipulation. He offered power, offered to help Lucien control Evelyn and Mira as tools. Lucien's answer was instant. He stripped Varick of rank and ordered him sealed in the Dungeon of Ash, an ancient prison beneath the castle that even elders feared. But Varick wasn't the only traitor. Lucien realized the truth too late. Varick had allies outside the castle, and Evelyn's existence was already known. That night, assassins infiltrated the servants' routes, humans hired by vampires, desperate men who didn't understand what they served. They broke into Evelyn's guarded rooms. Lucien arrived in time, shadows moving like living steel. He disarmed without cruelty, without gore, just speed, precision, and terror. Evelyn watched him protect them, and something in her chest twisted. She had expected monsters from vampires. But Lucien wasn't protecting out of entertainment. He looked afraid. Afraid of losing them. After the attack, Evelyn found him in the corridor, standing too still, jaw clenched like he was holding himself together by force. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. Lucien's eyes met hers. "Yes," he said. "I did." Pause. Then quieter, "I have already lost too much blood." Evelyn's heart stuttered at the word blood, not the violent kind but the family kind. Mira tugged on Lucien's sleeve. "Are you, my dad?" The hallway froze. Evelyn gasped. "Mira?" Lucien stared at the child. Then he answered with a truth that wasn't complete but was honest. "I don't know," he said softly. "But I swear to you, no one will hurt your mother again." And for the first time in centuries, Lucien Voss meant it with something dangerously close to love. The awakening of the Blood Moon bride. The Blood Moon seal wasn't just lineage. It was a lock. And Evelyn's mark had begun to unlock something inside her. Her dreams grew sharper, memories that weren't hers but lived in her blood. Ancient halls, royal vows, a ritual under a red moon where a queen bound herself to a king to save a kingdom. In her dreams, Evelyn spoke a language she didn't know when awake, words that made the air vibrate and candles bow. Mira, too, began to change, not into something dark but into something aware. She could sense lies. She could feel magic like warmth. Lucien brought Evelyn to the hidden library, sealed for centuries. Doors opened for him. But when Evelyn touched the stone, the door opened wider as if greeting her. Inside they found the truth. There had once been two branches of the Voss bloodline. One vampire. One human, hidden on purpose. A prophecy was written in old script. When the blood moon rises thrice in one season, the lost bride will return in servant's cloth. The king will kneel. The child will unlock the crown. Evelyn's hands shook as she read it. "I'm not a bride," she whispered. Lucien's voice was quiet. "Prophecies don't ask permission." Evelyn turned to him, angry through fear. "I didn't choose this. I chose to be a mother. I chose to survive." Lucien stepped closer, not touching but close enough to feel. "And you survived with kindness," he said. "In a kingdom built on cruelty." For the first time, the emotional distance between them cracked openly. Evelyn saw what no one else saw. Lucien was lonely in a way that could kill immortals. He had ruled through fear because fear was safer than hope. And Evelyn, human, poor, underestimated, had become the one thing his world couldn't ignore. The council, now terrified, demanded Lucien marry a vampire noblewoman to stabilize the dynasty. They saw Evelyn as a threat, a servant, a scandal. Lucien refused. So they attempted the oldest kind of cruelty, public humiliation. They dragged Evelyn into the great hall under false charges of witchcraft and sedition. Nobles laughed. Servants watched with bowed heads because they were taught not to care. Mira stepped forward, shaking but brave. "She didn't do anything," she shouted. "My mom is good." A noblewoman sneered. "Good doesn't belong in a vampire court." Lucien arrived. And the room died. He walked through the crowd like a storm with a heartbeat. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. He took Evelyn's hand. Gasp. The king never took anyone's hand. "Look at her," Lucien said, eyes scanning the room. "This woman has cleaned your messes. She has fed your pride. She has endured your cruelty without becoming cruel." He turned his gaze to the noblewoman who'd sneered. "And you, call her unworthy?" The noblewoman tried to speak. Lucien's mark flared. The blood moon seal reacted. And so did Evelyn's. Crimson light wrapped around them both, two seals synchronizing like they were meant to. The room trembled. Windows shuddered. Candles bent as if bowing. Evelyn's voice, without her intending it, spoke ancient words. A vow. A binding phrase that only royal blood could speak. Lucien's eyes widened. So did Evelyn's. Because in that moment she realized the truth. Her blood wasn't only royal. It was keyed to Lucien's. Not forced. Not stolen. Destined, yet still terrifying. Lucien didn't exploit it. He looked at her like she was human first, prophecy second. And he asked quietly, so only she could hear. Do you trust me? Evelyn's throat tightened. After a life of being used, trust felt like stepping off a cliff. But Mira squeezed her hand. And Evelyn remembered the moral she lived by, even when it hurt. Kindness is not weakness. She nodded once. Yes, she whispered. But don't turn me into a weapon. Lucien's eyes softened. I will turn you into a queen, he said, only if you choose it. The queen no one expected. Varric's allies struck with desperation. They unleashed a forbidden curse designed to fracture the blood moon seal. If Evelyn couldn't bond, the dynasty would collapse again. The curse targeted what Evelyn loved most. Mira. One evening, Mira collapsed, clutching her chest, eyes fluttering as if pulled into a dream too deep. Evelyn screamed for help. Healers panicked. Council members whispered that the human child was proof Evelyn was dangerous. Lucien's rage shook the castle. But Evelyn didn't collapse into helplessness. She did what she had always done, she fought with love. She held Mira and closed her eyes, and for the first time she allowed the ancient language to rise in her throat. Not to hurt. Not to dominate. To heal. The words left her like warm light. The seal on her arm burned, but it didn't feel like pain. It felt like awakening. Lucien watched, stunned. Because the prophecy's twist wasn't that Evelyn would become powerful by turning into a vampire. It was that her human heart was the power the kingdom lacked. Evelyn traced the seal's shape over Myra's skin, whispering the vow that bound bloodlines together, not for control but for protection. Myra's breathing steadied. Her eyes opened. And in her gaze was something ancient and bright. Mom, she whispered, I saw a lady in a crown. She said, you're the queen who brings mercy. Evelyn sobbed, pressing her forehead to Myra's. Lucien fell to one knee beside them, again not out of ritual but out of raw emotion. You saved her, he said, voice breaking in a way no one had ever heard. Evelyn looked at him, exhausted, terrified, and strangely calm. I'm not your weapon, she repeated softly. I'm a mother. Lucien's eyes lifted to meet hers. Then be a mother, he said. And be my equal. The final confrontation came at dawn under the fading blood moon. Varric's allies attempted to open the ash dungeon and unleash ancient prisoners to overthrow Lucien. The castle shook. Shadows ran. Nobles hid. But the servants stood with Evelyn. Because Evelyn had always seen them as people. They formed lines in the corridors, guiding children, protecting the weak, refusing to abandon one another. The instant karma of the story wasn't cruelty returned, it was dignity rising. Lucien, fueled by love instead of loneliness, fought to seal the breach. Evelyn stood beside him, not in armor, not with a sword, but with her seal glowing like a promise. Together they spoke the binding words, king and queen, vampire and human, power and compassion. The ash dungeon closed. The traitors were exposed. And the court was forced to bow, not because Lucien demanded it, but because the kingdom finally witnessed what true strength looked like. Later, in the grand hall, Lucien held court, not with threats but with a decree that changed the realm. From this day forward, he announced, no servant will be treated as less than life. No human will be hunted in my name. The throne exists to protect, not to feed pride. The nobles were furious. The people were stunned. The servants cried. Evelyn stood beside Lucien, Mira in her arms, wearing no crown yet. But the room already knew. She wasn't wearing royalty. She was wearing respect. Lucien turned to Evelyn, voice low, for her alone. I cannot erase what my kind has done, he said. But I can spend forever proving we can be better. Evelyn stared at him, heart aching with the slow, careful beginning of love. You'll have to learn humility, she whispered. Lucien's mouth curved faintly, almost a smile. I have, he said. I knelt. Mira giggled. He's gonna be nice now, Mom? Lucien glanced at the child. I will try. Evelyn finally let herself breathe. Because the greatest justice wasn't revenge. It was transformation. A kingdom built on fear was learning compassion. Because a maid's daughter told the truth, and a vampire king chose love through actions, not words.